Welcome to WoW Recapped. Today we'll show you a 2002 film titled Spider-Man. Nerdy teenager Peter Parker is transformed into an extraordinary superhero after he's accidentally bitten by a radioactive spider. When his Uncle Ben is savagely murdered during a robbery, Peter Parker promises to use his powers to avenge his death. Deeming himself Spider-Man, he sets about ridding the streets of crime, bringing him into conflict with a dangerous supervillain, Green Goblin. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Peter Benjamin Parker is a shy, nerdy, and intelligent high school senior student at Midtown Secondary College of Science and Technology. Peter lives with his Uncle Ben and Aunt May because his parents are dead. Peter's rich friend, Harold Theopolis, who is commonly known as Harry, is somewhat jealous of the affection his billionaire scientist father, Professor Norman, shows Peter. Norman often appreciates Peter for his scientific aptitude and his interest towards it. On a school trip, Peter visits Columbia University Genetics Laboratory with his crush, Mary Jane, and Harry. The lab works on spiders and has even managed to create genetically engineered super spiders. Peter's taking photographs of Mary Jane for the school magazine when one of the super spiders escapes without anyone noticing and bites his hands. He doesn't tell anyone about it. This genetically altered venom begins to work incredibly on Peter, and he falls ill when he reaches home. General Slocum, one of the top scientists, visits Oscorp to see the working of a new super soldier formula. Professor Strom warns Norman about the formula and threatens to pull off all military funding. Norman exposes himself to a gas formula and gains some strange superhuman strength. He kills Strom and steals a Green Goblin-shaped armored exoskeleton flight suit and Batman-shaped jet glider from Oscorp. The next morning, Peter wakes up feeling better and notices some physical changes in himself. Peter finds he's no longer nearsighted and has developed spider-like abilities. He can shoot webs out of his wrists and has quick reflexes, superhuman speed and strength, and a heightened ability to sense danger. His fragile, linear, and scrawny physique now ripples with muscles. At school that day, Peter demonstrates his own new agility by carrying Mary Jane and her food tray when she slips at lunch and then beating Flash in a fistfight. At night, Peter and Mary Jane are casually flirting across the fence but are interrupted by Flash when he arrives in his car. Peter considers buying a car to impress Mary Jane, but then realizes that he can't afford it. One night, he sees an advertisement in the paper about a local professional wrestling league paying $3,000 to the person who can survive 3 minutes in the ring with their champion, Bonesaw McGraw. Pete tells his Uncle Ben and Aunt May that he's going to the library. Both of them are worried about the changes in Peter's personality, and Ben insists on driving him to the library. He tries to explain his and May's concerns. He encourages Peter not to get into any more fights. Peter reacts badly. He tells Ben he's not Peter's father and he shouldn't act like he is. Peter not only survives the wrestling match, but he also defeats Bonesaw in 2 minutes, and the promoter pays Peter only $100. Angry at being gypped, Peter stands aside. A robber named Dennis steals all the cash and holds up the promoter, escaping through an elevator. Peter allows him to escape in retaliation. However, when he gets out into the street, he discovers that Dennis fatally wounded Ben with a gun and stole his car. In anguish, Peter chases down Dennis and beats him. The robber falls out of a window, where his body is recovered by the police. Peter is heartbroken that night, knowing that if he had stopped Dennis when he had his chance and not acted so selfishly, then Uncle Ben would still be alive. Meanwhile, a crazed Norman interrupts a military experiment by Oscorp's corporate rival, Quest Aerospace, and kills several people. Inspired by Ben's admonition, Peter decides to use his superpowers to do good. Upon graduating, he designs a new red and blue skin-tight costume with spider web patterns and symbols. Peter begins using his abilities to fight injustice, donning the masked persona of Spider-Man. He swings around New York, foiling petty robberies as the Fantastic Spider-Man that he borrows from the announcer at the wrestling match. After graduating, Peter, Harry, and Mary Jane move to Manhattan. Peter and Harry get a loft together and attend classes at Empire State. Mary Jane works as a waitress and struggles to get acting auditions. Harry and Mary Jane start seeing each other. Harry apologizes to Peter and blames him that he was too shy to make the first move. Peter struggles to hold down a job after his scientist teacher boss, Professor Curtis C. Connors, fires him for always being late. Norman offers to help him find one, but respects Peter's desire to make his own way in the world. J. Jonah Jameson, the grumpy and cantankerous publisher of the Daily Bugle newspaper, hires Peter as a freelance photographer since he's the only person providing clear images of Spider-Man. Oscorp has more government contracts and the company's stock is soaring. Norman is furious to learn that the board of directors has chosen this moment to accept an offer from Quest. His insanity manifests itself in a split personality: the murderous, scheming villain known as Green Goblin and the driven yet confused Norman. As the Goblin, he attacks Oscorp's annual Unity Day Street Fair parade and kills the board of directors. His attack also endangers Mary Jane. Spider-Man fights off the Goblin and rescues Mary Jane when she nearly falls to her death. Mary Jane falls in love with Spider-Man without knowing that he's Peter. The Goblin decides he and Spider-Man should be partners. He attacks the Bugle office to attract Spider-Man into a trap, using knockout gas to subdue him, and then gives Spider-Man a few days to think over his offer of partnership. He warns Spider-Man that the city will eventually turn against him and that they should rule it together. A few days later, on Thanksgiving, Goblin stages a fire at an apartment building to get an answer from Spider-Man. Spider-Man refuses to join him and the two fight. Spider-Man receives a bad cut on his arm. They both realize that they're late for Thanksgiving and race back separately. When Peter arrives at dinner with fresh blood from the cut on his sleeve, Norman realizes Peter is Spider-Man and leaves. On the way out, he insults Mary Jane and she leaves, hurt that Harry didn't defend her. That night, Goblin attacks Aunt May at home, sending her to the hospital. While visiting her, Mary Jane reveals her crush on Spider-Man to Peter, but they wind up having an intimate moment themselves. Harry sees this and knows his relationship with Mary Jane is over. Devastated, Harry tells his father that Peter loves Mary Jane, unknowingly revealing Spider-Man's biggest weakness. Goblin decides to strike at Spider-Man through Mary Jane. He kidnaps and holds Mary Jane and a Roosevelt Island tramcar full of children hostage alongside the Queensboro Bridge. He forces Peter to choose whom he wants to save and drops them both. Peter saves both Mary Jane and the tramcar. Goblin then throws him into a nearby abandoned building and brutally beats him. The two fight and the Goblin overpowers Spider-Man, even throwing a pumpkin-shaped Goblin grenade bomb directly at Spider-Man's face, which heavily damages Spider-Man's mask and wounds him. As the Goblin holds back Spider-Man and is about to kill him with dual blades, he makes the mistake of threatening Mary Jane. Furious at this, Spider-Man beats Goblin senselessly, but stops when the Goblin unmasks to reveal himself to be Norman. Peter is shocked that Norman is the Goblin. Norman's persona takes over the personality, and he tries to reason with Peter that all the actions that had occurred were from the influence of the Goblin's persona upon him. As Norman talks to Peter, asking for forgiveness, Goblin's jet glider appears behind Spider-Man, and the Goblin persona takes over Norman. Goblin tries to use his jet glider to kill Spider-Man, but he leaps out of the way just in time. Norman is stabbed, impaled, and killed. As he dies, Norman asks Peter not to tell Harry about the Green Goblin. Spider-Man takes Norman's body back to his penthouse apartment. Harry sees them and blames Spider-Man for Norman's death. At Norman's funeral, Harry swears revenge on Spider-Man, whom he deems responsible for his father's death. He also thanks Peter for being such a great friend. Peter goes to visit Uncle Ben's grave. There, Mary Jane confesses to Peter that she loves him. Peter, however, feels he must protect her from the unwanted attention of his enemies, so he hides his true feelings and tells Mary Jane that they can only be friends, causing her to be heartbroken. Mary Jane has an inkling that she might have kissed him before. As Peter leaves, he recalls Ben's words, knowing both his blessing and his curse in life that he's Spider-Man, and accepts his new responsibility as Spider-Man. And here, the movie ends. And that's all for our video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay up to date with such interesting movie recap videos.